Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Hump week, hump day, Wednesday, middle of the week, busy week here during the summer. Today, I'm eager to revisit the NAR settlement. As everyone knows, the NAR settlement goes into effect August 18th. And in staying connected to this topic, I listened to the Tom Ferry Show yesterday. That's his podcast. Tom's been doing a great job keeping realtors, loan officers, the public informed about these changes, and he's had great guests. As a matter of fact, it was a little over a year ago, I was having breakfast with Brenda Henry, and Brenda, a good friend of mine, I go, Brenda, what's taking up your mind space right now? And she's like, these NAR lawsuits, because back then they were lawsuits. And she goes, are you aware of them? I'm like, I've heard of them, but I'm not super familiar with them. And then she went on to detail what was concerning her. And her thought was that NAR was going to lose these lawsuits and that was going to create this watershed moment for real estate agents. I was really kind of ignorant on the topic. So after that meeting, I did a couple hours of research and familiarized myself on the lawsuits. And part of that was listening to a couple of Tom Ferry podcasts. And early on, this is late last year, Tom was a real leader in talking about what was going to happen. Well, I was excited to see he was revisiting the topic yesterday, and he had a couple of guests on. He had Lisa Shinetti, who I'm saying her name wrong. I apologize, Lisa, if you get this. And then Jack Miller. And Jack Miller has been really informative on this whole thing. And so what I want to do is just share some of their thoughts from the Tom Ferry podcast. You know what, dang it, I didn't put the podcast link in my notes. I'll try to get the links on my notes. And if not, I am going to do a LinkedIn post on this morning, so you'll be able to find the podcast link in my LinkedIn post. But it's the Tom Ferry Show, and it's from yesterday. The name of the show is the Buyer Agency Adjustments Before New Commission Changes. And so he had Lisa and Jack on, and Jack kind of framed up the conversation by saying, the biggest change we're going to see is the decoupling of commissions from the buyer and seller side. And that now the buyer's agents are going to have to negotiate for their own value in the transaction directly with their client, the same as listing agents have done forever. And then as the podcast developed, Lisa, framed it by going, look, real estate has always been a sales business. Listing agents have always been great at sales. Buyer's agents have been great at some parts of sales, just not great at selling their clients on what they do and what their value is. And so the thing that needs to change is that agents need to be able to convince their clients, their buyers of their value, and they need to calibrate their compensation to that value. And that's really the only thing that's changed. And as that came on, one of the tones of this conversation was, look, everything agents do has to be better and intentional. And Tom at one point was saying the way that their first conversation with a potential client, the way they dress, how they talk, their first appointment, the pre-confirmation to the first appointment, everything matters because consumers have choices. And now the buyer's world is transitioning to differentiation, right? That the differences matter, and differentiation is going to expand into compensation. So really, really, really interesting. And Lisa kind of did the obligatory comment that the days where a buyer's agent showed up unprepared, didn't have a bunch of material, didn't have a presentation, didn't have information on the market, didn't have information on houses that are listed. The days that they showed up unprepared are over, and that agent, if they don't evolve, is going to become extinct. But both the guests, they're both realtors. Both Lisa and Jack, they're in the real estate world. They're brokers or own companies or consultants, and they're very bullish on realtors, and they really believe the value that realtors can provide. Just the realtors need to be able to voice that value. And of course, they talked about everything from the initial presentation. One of the things that was and value propositions, right? Because now you have to negotiate or calibrate your comp to your value. And so if you can't quite, get the compensation you want, then you most likely have to improve the value that you offer or your sales skills, right? And you'll really enjoy the podcast is 48 minutes. You will really enjoy watching this podcast, and it's very informative, and it's both encouraging and a little dose of reality. And I think that's a really good mix. Jack said a bunch of great things, but Jack and Lisa both brought this up. Real estate buyers agents have to learn how to get comfortable talking about money. They have to get super comfortable talking to their clients about how they get paid, how much it's going to cost their clients, and they need to be able to explain why their clients should gladly pay them what the value they're going to receive. And as they get more comfortable with that, it will get easier. And part of that, by the way, is start now. Don't wait till the 18th. Start having these conversations today. Start sharpening your skills today so that you can win tomorrow. And the agents that don't learn how to do this, well, the agents that do are going to have a lot of success. They're going to get a market share. And one of the ways that I really like, one of the ways that Jack said, hey, look, there's a lot of agents out there that provide a ton of buyers agents that provide a ton of value. Those agents are going to win. All they have to do is learn how to package it and how to explain it to their customer, to their clients. It's the agents that aren't providing value that might be challenged. And if they aren't providing them value, then their challenge is to be able to figure out, to learn how to provide value, right? And it's that simple. It's really that simple. And so Tom then kind of went into hey, you have to design something that's more competitive. You have to design how your services are different than the next person's. And Lisa would say you have to design something that solves your client's problems or removes some of their friction in their transaction, right? And so that was all an interesting kind of a first part of the podcast. The second part got even more interesting, I thought. And one of the things, and Jack really talked about this, and both Lisa and Jack talked about this, and I'm just going to kind of throw it all into one bucket. But one thing is, like Jack said, is, hey, real estate agents, stop trying to read people's minds, right? Stop. And what that means, if you're on the listing side, you're the listing agent, don't talk your seller into offering, a cooperative commission or credit. Don't, because what that is saying is you're assuming the buyer wants that. Instead, what Jack would advise you is have the conversation with the seller, talk to them about the possibilities, talk to them about how the market's working, and then see what offers you get, right? And then let the buyer solve what they need for the transaction versus just blindly offering a flat dollar amount. Don't pretend to read the buyer's mind. Let the buyer and the buyer's agent come to you with a transaction that works. And on the flip side, on the buyer's side, like a buyer's agent shouldn't approach a transaction. My client can't afford to pay my commission, so I'm only going to show my client properties where there's a cooperative commission, right? Because now, once again, what Jack would say is don't read the seller's mind. Don't read the seller and the listing agent's mind. You weren't there for their conversation. Instead, if you're a buyer, regardless of what's listed in the MLS, make your best offer and then start the conversation on how you can make the transaction work. But don't assume, right? And I thought that was really, really clever. And then Jack went on further. There was a whole section on this. Let the market work. And here's what happens in the marketplace. You have a motivated seller that wants to sell his house. You have a motivated buyer that wants to buy the house, right? The market then dynamics will figure out how to make that work, right? And so don't worry about restrictions or preconceived notions. Don't worry about what you fear may not be. Instead, if you have a motivated buyer, make the best offer that your buyer can do. And then if it meets the seller's requirements, good. If it doesn't, the seller can counter, and then the market will find the equilibrium of where everybody ends up, including what will be the agent's commissions, what might be lender credit, what might be the seller credit. Like the market will figure it out, you have to let the market work, and don't shut the market off. Don't shortchange the market. Let it that as an agent, that is what your true value is coming to a market solution. It's collaborating, innovative solutions. But you start with a motivated buyer and a motivated seller, you should be able to work this out. And I really like that whole concept. I thought that was just terrific, you know. And then Lisa added to this: don't assume, if you're a real estate agent, if you're, say, a buyer's agent, that the seller, the listing agent, knows what they're doing, knows is up to speed on all this, on all the options, and about how money works in the transaction, and how to structure it. And so if you're the buyer's agent, what you need to do is, when you put your offer in, you need to put a fee sheet, a net sheet, into the seller to help explain how the transaction works. So that's something normally the listing agent would do, but a strategy might be for the buyer's agent to do it, to help both the listing agent and the seller understand how the transaction will work as you're proposing it, so that they can see how different ways you're suggesting the work with the money works, which I really like that part too. It's just really super interesting. And that and that got to a whole nother topic in here about fees, about calibrating fees. And this, I hadn't really realized this, and maybe you had or have, but so buyer's agents, they're having to fortify their value, because now they have to negotiate their value directly to their client, who has to accept it and has to be willing to pay for it, however they're going to pay for it, by whatever method, which could be through a cooperative commission. But one of the things that agents are talking about, which I was unaware of, and I guess this is very common, but they're talking about, I know we've heard this, tiered services. And part of when you talk about tiered services, it has to go with what type of buyer's arrangement are you doing? Are you doing an exclusive or non-exclusive? And so the suggestion is, look, a lot of agents will have to do non-exclusive agreements. And non-exclusive agreements means, if I bring you the property, if I take you to the property, if I promote the property to you, if I write the contract, then you'll pay me a commission, whatever our agreed upon the commission is. But if you source it on your own, or you can work with another agent, you can walk into an open house, I didn't facilitate it, then I don't get paid. That's non-exclusive, right? And so some agents just don't know, look, if I can get my buyers to sign an exclusive agreement at the comp that we're going to say, which we have to talk at our first conversation, because I can't show my house unless we talk about my comp. And one of the ways to make it more palatable is go, look, if I find the perfect house for you and I get the great deal for you, then you're willing to pay me my 3 bananas, right? Or whatever it happens to be. And then that's different than an exclusive, right? Which means, hey, if you buy a house, I get paid no matter how you find that house. And it was interesting as they talked about it, like, why would you use the non-exclusive versus the exclusive, and different tiers? And that then went to, when would you cut your commission kind of thing, with conversation, which was really interesting. But I like that non-exclusive idea. And what Lisa had said is, look, a lot of conversations should start, a lot of relationships should start as non-exclusive, and then the agent earns the right to being exclusive. And I wondered, well, what the heck is the difference? Is it the same service? If so, why would I, as a buyer, why would I sign an exclusive versus non-exclusive? But what I really like how Jack and Lisa did is, they're like, no, exclusive, non-exclusive means, look, I'm providing a service to you, like it's a transactional service. If it's exclusive, well, I'm up at a notch. I'm going to start, I'm going to source off property, I'm going to source off market properties. I'm going to knock on doors. I'm going to cold call for you. I'm going to bring every opportunity to you first. Like, my level of service to you is higher than if you just have me in a non-exclusive where you want me just to be transactional. And that and each of them have worked with their agents to create a menu of services for exclusive and non-exclusive exclusivity, all to what the buyer wants to pay, right? If the buyer wants to pay 1 banana, you get non-exclusive. If they want to pay 3 bananas or 4 bananas or whatever, they get exclusive. And I thought that was really interesting. And then came the conversation, well, what happens when your buyer makes an offer on a house and there's not a cooperative commission, and the buyer doesn't have the ability to pay whatever your full fee is? What do you do then? Really interesting. Of course, you can innovate around it, But part of the conversation was, which I really liked that Jack's saying is, well, how much work did you do? Like, how much should you be paid? Like, was it the first house you showed and you worked an hour with this, buyer? Then maybe you take less. But have you worked with them for 6 months or a year and you've made 12 offers and you've worked 200 hours? Well, then you can explain to them you deserve to get full pay, which brought into, and this last thing I'll touch on, and I'll let you guys listen to this. Hopefully go watch the podcast. But it came into, Tom Ferry suggested, hey, do we need to do weekly, status sheets like we do for listings, for our buyers, for our sellers. So for a seller, because your listing is going to expire, you constantly are giving them update reports, every 2 weeks or every month. Here's what I promised to do. Here's the activity we had. Here's what's going on. Here's all the ways I'm marketing your house. Here's all the ways I'm working for you. Because they're trying to keep the sellers, enthused about their services, and so that they see there's value in them, right? Well, what Tom suggested, and then Jack supported, we needed to do the same thing to our buyers, because we need to keep them engaged. We need to keep them wanting to pay us, right? We have to give them a weekly or bi-weekly report telling them all the things we're doing for them, how we're delivering all the promises that we made, about all the value we're giving to them. We need to remind them somehow. We need to anchor to how much work we're doing for them, so that when we get into the position where somebody wants to cut our commissions, we can go, hey, look, I've worked a few hundred hours on this. I think I've earned my commission. And then we have a right to say, no, I think I deserve to get full pay, which I love that idea. And so there's a bunch of gems in this podcast. I will try to link it I'll try to link it someplace, but it will definitely be on my LinkedIn. Check it out. Tom Ferry Show, yesterday's podcast. Thank you for checking me out today. Hopefully you got something out of this. I hope you have a great Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow. And tomorrow, the New Normal series. Can't wait. It's number 3 in the New Normal series. I can't wait to get to it. Looking forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.